The day has done all it needs to do. Now only stillness remains. Let your thoughts loosen, like threads unraveling in the dark. What comes next is not to solve or to chase, just a quiet story drifting close. Perhaps it's a voice that remembers you, or a silence that has waited patiently. Let it meet you where you are, and let it lead you gently into rest. The wind howled across the Nebraska plains, carrying the scent of dust and forgotten promises. Clara Everett pulled her shawl tighter, her boots crunching against the gravel as she trudged toward the silhouette of the old inn. It loomed against the twilight sky, its weathered sign barely legible, the Drifter's Rest. Once a bustling stop for travelers on the Oregon Trail, it had been abandoned for decades, left to the mercy of time and whispers. Clara's heart raced, not from the cold, but from the weight of the letter in her pocket, a faded envelope, addressed to her in a hand she didn't recognize, urging her to come here, to this forsaken place. She wasn't supposed to be here. At 25, Clara had a life in Omaha, a teaching job, a fiancé named Thomas, and a future that felt safe, predictable. But the letter delivered to her doorstep 3 days ago had unraveled all that. Come to the inn, it read, "There's something you must know about your mother." Clara's mother, Eleanor, had died when she was a child, leaving behind only vague memories and a locket Clara still wore. The letter promised answers, secrets Eleanor had kept, and it bore a postmark from this nowhere town of Red Hollow. Against Thomas's protests, Clara had packed a bag and boarded the train. The inn's porch creaked under her weight, the wood soft with rot. The windows were dark, some boarded, others cracked like spider webs. She hesitated, her hand hovering over the door. The letter had mentioned a name, Lila Hart, a woman who claimed to have known her mother. Clara didn't know what to expect, but the pull of those words, your mother, was stronger than her fear. She pushed the door open, and it groaned, revealing a dim interior thick with dust. Inside, the air was stale, heavy with the scent of mildew and something sweeter, like old roses. A chandelier hung crookedly, its crystals dulled but catching the last of the daylight in faint glimmers. The lobby was frozen in time. A cracked mirror above a fireplace, a guest book open on a counter, its pages yellowed. Clara's footsteps echoed as she stepped further in, her eyes scanning for any sign of life. "Hello?" she called, her voice swallowed by the silence. A faint creak came from upstairs, deliberate, like a footstep on a loose board. Clara froze, her breath catching. She wasn't alone. "Miss Hart?" She tried again, louder. No answer, but the creak came again, slower this time, as if someone were testing the floor. Her fingers brushed the locket at her throat, a nervous habit. She wasn't superstitious, not really, but the stories about this place, whispers of travelers who never left, of voices in the walls pressed against her mind. She moved toward the staircase, each step deliberate. The banister was smooth under her hand, worn by countless others who'd climbed these steps long ago. At the top, a hallway stretched into shadow, doors lining either side. One stood ajar, a sliver of pale light spilling out. Clara's pulse quickened. The letter had said to find Lila in room 7. She counted the doors as she passed 3, 5, 7. The door was heavy, its brass number tarnished but clear. She knocked softly, then pushed it open. The room was small, lit by a single oil lamp on a table. A woman sat in a rocking chair by the window, her back to Clara. Her hair was long silver, catching the lamplight like a halo. "You came," the woman said, her voice low, almost a sigh. She didn't turn. "I wasn't sure you would." Clara's throat tightened. "Are you Lila Hart?" she asked, stepping inside. The door creaked shut behind her, though she hadn't touched it. The woman nodded, still facing the window. "I knew your mother, Clara, better than anyone." Her words carried a weight, a sadness that made Clara's chest ache. "Sit. There's much to tell you." Clara hesitated, then took the chair across from Lila. Up close, the woman's face was lined but striking, her eyes a pale blue that seemed to see too much. "How did you know her?" Clara asked, pulling the letter from her pocket. "And why now? Why here?" Lila's gaze flicked to the locket at Clara's throat, and her lips curved in a faint, knowing smile. "That was hers, wasn't it? Eleanor's. She wore it every day." She leaned forward, her voice dropping. "She left something here, Clara. Something she meant for you to find. But it's not just a thing, it's a story. And it begins with a man named Samuel." Clara's breath hitched. She'd never heard of a Samuel in her mother's life. Her father had always said Eleanor was a private woman, her past a closed book. "Who was he?" Clara asked, leaning closer despite herself. Lila's eyes darkened and she glanced toward the window, as if expecting someone to appear in the glass. "Samuel was her heart," she said softly, "and her ruin. He came to this inn 30 years ago, a drifter with a smile that could charm the stars. Eleanor was young, working here as a maid. They fell in love, fast and fierce, the kind that burns you up inside." Clara's fingers tightened around the locket. "My father." "Wasn't Samuel," Lila interrupted, her voice gentle but firm. "Your father came later. Samuel, he didn't stay. But he left something behind, something Eleanor hid in this inn. And it's been waiting for you." A chill ran through Clara, not from the cold, but from the weight of Lila's words. The floor creaked again, somewhere deeper in the inn, and Lila's head tilted, as if listening. "It's still here," she whispered. "Her secret. But you'll need to be careful. Not everything in this place wants it found." Clara's mouth went dry. "What do you mean?" Lila's smile was thin, almost ghostly. "This inn, it holds on to things. Promises, regrets, voices. You'll hear them, Clara. You'll feel them. But you mustn't run. Not yet." The lamp flickered, casting long shadows across the room. Clara's heart pounded, but she couldn't look away from Lila's eyes. There was something there, something old, something waiting. She didn't know if she believed in ghosts, but she believed in the pull of her mother's memory, and she wasn't leaving until she knew the truth. Clara's fingers lingered on the locket, its familiar weight grounding her as Lila's words hung in the air. The inn seemed to breathe around them, its creaks and sighs weaving into the silence. The lamp's flame steadied, casting a warm glow over the room, but the shadows in the corners felt heavier now, watchful. Clara shifted in her chair, her mind racing with questions about her mother, Samuel, and whatever secret this place held. Lila's pale eyes studied her, unblinking, as if measuring her resolve. "You said my mother hid something here," Clara began, her voice steady, despite the unease curling in her chest. "What is it?" And why me? Why now? Lila leaned back, the rocking chair creaking softly. Eleanor was careful, she said. Too careful, maybe. She didn't want her past following her, not after Samuel. But secrets have a way of clawing their way out, don't they? She left something for you, Clara, because she knew one day you'd come looking. A daughter always does. Clara frowned, her fingers tightening around the locket. But I didn't even know about this place until your letter. How could she be so sure I'd find it? Lila's smile was faint, almost secretive. Your mother believed in things most folks don't. Signs, whispers, promises that outlast time. She knew you'd feel the pull, just like she did. Lila's gaze drifted to the window again, where the night pressed against the glass. The inn helped, too. It's got a way of calling people back. A shiver ran down Clara's spine. She wanted to dismiss Lila's words as superstition, the kind of tales spun to spook travelers, but the air in the room felt charged, like the moment before a storm. So where do I start? She asked, her voice quieter now. If she hid something, where is it? Lila stood, moving with a grace that belied her age, and crossed to a small dresser in the corner. She pulled open a drawer, retrieving a tarnished brass key, its edges worn smooth. This opens the attic, she said, holding it out to Clara. Eleanor spent a lot of time up there, back when she worked here. If she hid anything, that's where you'll find it. Clara took the key, its cold metal biting into her palm. The attic? She echoed, glancing toward the ceiling. The thought of climbing into the dark, dusty heart of the inn made her stomach twist, but the locket at her throat felt warm, almost pulsing, urging her forward. Leela nodded. It's not just boards and cobwebs up there. Things linger, memories, echoes. You'll see what I mean. But don't go alone. Take this. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, leather-bound journal, its cover cracked and faded. This was hers. Not all of it's clear, but it'll guide you. Clara opened the journal, its pages brittle under her fingers. Her mother's handwriting stared back at her slanted, hurried, as if written in stolen moments. The first page held a single line, *Samuel, forgive me. I couldn't keep it. Clara's breath caught. The words felt raw, intimate, like stumbling into a conversation not meant for her. She closed the journal, clutching it to her chest. Why didn't she tell me about him? She asked, more to herself than Lila. She wanted to protect you, Lila said softly. From him, from this place. But some things can't stay buried. She paused, her eyes narrowing. There's someone else here, Clara. Someone who knows you're looking. Clara's head snapped up. Who? Lila didn't answer right away. Instead, she moved to the door, her steps silent on the worn floorboards. You'll meet him soon enough, she said, her voice low. He's been waiting, too. The words sent a chill through Clara, but before she could press further, a sharp knock echoed from downstairs, reverberating through the inn. Lila's expression tightened, and she gestured for Clara to stay quiet. Stay here, she whispered, slipping into the hallway. Clara stood frozen, the key and journal heavy in her hands. The knock came again, louder, insistent. She crept to the door, peering into the shadowed hallway. Lila was already halfway down the stairs, her silver hair catching the faint light. Clara's heart pounded, but curiosity pulled her forward. She followed, keeping to the edges of the steps to avoid creaking. At the bottom, Lila stood by the front door, her hand on the knob. She glanced back at Clara, her eyes sharp with warning, but she opened the door anyway. A man stood there, tall and lean, his face half hidden by the brim of a weathered hat. His coat was dusted with the grit of the plains, and his eyes, dark, searching, locked onto Clara immediately. "You must be Eleanor's girl," he said, his voice rough but warm, like whiskey over gravel. "I'm Caleb. I knew your mother, too." He stepped inside, uninvited, and the door swung shut behind him with a soft thud. Clara's grip tightened on the journal. "How do you know who I am?" she asked, her voice sharper than she intended. Caleb's lips twitched, not quite a smile. "This place talks, Clara, and I've been listening for a long time." He glanced at Lila, who stood rigid, her hands clasped tightly. "Layla tell you about the attic yet?" Clara nodded, unease prickling her skin. There was something about Caleb, his ease, his familiarity, that didn't sit right. "What do you know about it?" she asked. "Enough," he said, his eyes flicking to the journal in her hands. "Your mother left more than just trinkets up there, but you'd best be careful. Not everything in this inn is as it seems." Lila stepped between them, her voice firm. "That's enough, Caleb. She's not ready for all of it." Caleb chuckled, low and knowing. "She's here, ain't she? That's ready enough." He tipped his hat to Clara, his eyes lingering a moment too long. "I'll be around. You'll need me before this is over." He turned and slipped back into the night, the door closing softly behind him. Leela exhaled, her shoulders sagging. "He's trouble," she muttered. "Always was." Clara's mind spun. Caleb, Lila, the journal, the attic, it was all too much, too fast. But the locket at her throat felt heavier now, like a tether to her mother's past. She looked at Lila, her voice steady. "I'm going to the attic. Tonight." Lila's eyes softened, but there was worry there, too. "Then take the journal. And listen not just to the words, but to the end. It'll tell you what you need to know." Clara nodded, her resolve hardening. The key burned in her hand, and the journal felt alive, its pages whispering secrets she wasn't sure she was ready to hear. But she'd come this far. There was no turning back now. Clara stood at the foot of the attic stairs, the brass key cold in her palm. The inn's silence pressed against her, broken only by the occasional groan of settling wood. Lila had retreated to her room, her parting words listened to the inn echoing in Clara's mind. The journal rested in her satchel, its weight a quiet reminder of her mother's secrets. The locket at her throat felt warm, almost alive, as if urging her upward. She glanced back at the empty lobby, half expecting Caleb's shadow to linger, but the inn was still. Too still. The stairs were narrow, their edges worn smooth by years of footsteps. Each step creaked under her weight, the sound sharp in the quiet. A single lantern hung at the landing, its flame casting long shadows that danced across the walls. Clara's breath hitched as she reached the attic door, its wood warped and scratched, as if someone had once tried to claw their way out. She fitted the key into the lock, her hand trembling slightly. The mechanism clicked, loud and final, and the door eased open with a low groan. The attic was vast, its slanted ceiling lost in shadow. Dust motes swirled in the beam of her lantern, revealing a clutter of forgotten things. A cracked mirror propped against a beam, a trunk with a broken latch, stacks of moldering books. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of old wood and something fainter, sweeter, like dried flowers. Clara stepped inside, her boots stirring dust that glittered in the light. The floorboards creaked, and she froze, half expecting a response from the dark. She set the lantern on a nearby crate and pulled the journal from her satchel. Its pages crinkled as she opened it, her mother's handwriting sharp and hurried. The entries were fragmented, a mix of thoughts and memories. One caught her eye. Samuel promised he'd come back. I waited in the attic night after night. The inn knows. It always knows. Clara's chest tightened. Her mother had been here, in this very room, waiting for a man who never returned. She closed the journal, her eyes scanning the attic. If Eleanor had hidden something, it was here, among these relics. She moved deeper, her lantern casting flickering light over the chaos. A faded quilt lay draped over a chair, its stitches fraying. She lifted it, revealing a small table carved with initials, E and S. Her fingers traced the letters, her heart racing. Eleanor and Samuel. The carving was deep, deliberate, a mark of something that had mattered. Clara knelt, searching the table for anything else, a note, a trinket, but found nothing. A soft thud came from the far corner, like something falling. Clara's head snapped up, her lantern swinging wildly. "Who's there?" She called, her voice sharper than she meant. Silence answered, but the air felt different now, charged, like the moment before lightning strikes. She stood, holding the lantern high, and moved toward the sound. In the corner, a small box lay on its side, its lid open. It was wooden, no bigger than a cigar box, its surface etched with delicate vines. Clara hadn't seen it before, hadn't even been near this corner. Her pulse quickened as she knelt beside it, setting the lantern down. Inside the box was a single object, a silver ring, simple but elegant, with a tiny sapphire that she lifted it, her fingers trembling. It was beautiful, but there was something else, a weight to it, a presence that made her skin prickle. She turned the ring over, noticing an inscription inside, asterisk, forever, S asterisk. Her breath caught. Samuel's ring, meant for her mother. Why had Eleanor hidden it here? Why not wear it, or sell it, or leave it behind when she left the inn? Clara slipped the ring into her pocket, her mind racing. The journal had mentioned Samuel's promise, his absence. Had he left this as a token only to break her mother's heart? The floor creaked behind her, deliberate and slow. Clara spun, her lantern casting wild shadows. "Lila?" She called, her voice tight. No answer. She stood, her eyes straining into the dark. The attic felt smaller now, the shadows closer. "Caleb, if that's you, this isn't funny." Still nothing, but the creak came again, nearer this time. Her heart pounded as she backed toward the door, clutching the journal. The lantern's flame flickered, as if caught in a draft, though the attic was still. She reached the stairs, her foot hovering over the first step, when a whisper brushed her ear so soft she might have imagined it. "Clara." She froze, her blood turning to ice. The voice was faint, feminine, achingly familiar, though she couldn't place it. Not Lila's. Not her mother's, not exactly. She turned, holding the lantern high, but the attic was empty. The box still lay open in the corner, the quilt undisturbed. Her breath came in shallow gasps. "Who's there?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. The whisper came again, clearer this time. "Find it." Clara's knees buckled, and she gripped the doorframe to steady herself. The locket at her throat burned against her skin, and she pressed a hand to it, grounding herself. She wanted to run, to flee down the stairs and out of the inn, but the ring in her pocket felt heavy, insistent. Her mother had left this for her, had hidden it here for a reason. And that voice, whatever it was, knew her name. Clara swallowed her fear, her resolve hardening. She wasn't leaving until she understood. She descended the stairs, her lantern casting long shadows that seemed to follow her. The inn was quiet again, but it didn't feel empty. She reached Lila's room and knocked softly. The door opened almost immediately, Lila's pale eyes wide with concern. "You found something?" she said, not a question. Clara held up the ring, its sapphire glinting. "This was in the attic. It's from Samuel." She hesitated, then added, "And I heard something." A voice. Lila's expression didn't change, but her hands tightened at her sides. "You're further along than I thought," she murmured. "The inn's waking up. It knows you're here." "What does that mean?" Clara asked, her voice sharp with frustration. "What's in this place? And why does it know me?" Lila stepped closer, her voice low. "This inn holds more than dust and memories, Clara. It holds promises, some kept, some broken. Your mother's promise is here, tied to you. That ring's just the start." She paused, her eyes searching Clara's. "But be careful. Not every voice wants to help." Clara's mouth went dry. She thought of Caleb, his knowing smile, his cryptic words. "Is it him?" she asked. "Is Caleb part of this?" Lila's lips thinned. "Caleb's got his own reasons for being here. He's tied to this place, same as your mother was. But you focus on the ring, on the journal. They'll lead you where you need to go." Clara nodded, though her mind was a tangle of fear and questions. The ring, the voice, the inn, they were all pieces of a puzzle she didn't understand. But she'd heard her name in the dark, and that was enough to keep her searching. Clara sat on the edge of the bed in the room Lila had given her, a small space on the inn's second floor with a sagging mattress and a single window overlooking the endless plains. The lantern cast a soft glow, its light catching the silver ring in her hand. She turned it over, the sapphire glinting like a tiny star. The inscription, "Forever," felt like a promise and a wound. Her mother's journal lay open beside her, its pages filled with fragments of a life Clara had never known. She read another entry, "Asterisk, the inn keeps him close, even now. I hear him in the walls, in the wind. He's sorry, but it's too late." The words sent a shiver through her, not just for their meaning, but for the desperation in her mother's hand. She set the ring on the knit-stand, its weight too much for her fingers. The voice in the attic still lingered in her mind, soft and familiar, calling her name. It hadn't been threatening, but it wasn't comforting either. It was urgent, like a plea. Clara rubbed her temples, trying to make sense of it all. Lila's warnings, Caleb's cryptic arrival, the ring, the journal, everything pointed to her mother's past, but the pieces didn't fit. Not yet. The inn was quiet now, but it felt alive, its creaks and groans like a conversation she couldn't quite hear. She stood, pacing the small room, her boots soft on the worn floorboards. The locket at her throat felt warm again, a subtle pulse against her skin. She stopped by the window, peering into the darkness. The plains stretched out, vast and empty, the stars above sharp and cold. For a moment, she thought she saw a figure near the horizon, a silhouette against the moonlight, but when she blinked, it was gone. A soft knock at the door made her jump. "Clara?" Lila's voice, low and cautious, came through the wood. Clara opened the door, finding Lila holding a tray with a teapot and 2 cups, steam curling in the dim light. "Thought you might need this," Lila said, stepping inside. "Can't sleep in a place like this without something to settle the nerves." Clara managed a small smile, taking the tray. "Thanks. I'm not sure I'll sleep much tonight anyway." She set the tray on the knit-stand next to the ring and poured tea for both of them. The scent of chamomile filled the room, grounding her slightly. Lila sat in the room's only chair, her hands folded in her lap. "You heard her, didn't you?" she asked, her eyes fixed on Clara. "In the attic." Clara's hand froze mid-pour. "Her?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "You mean my mother?" Leela nodded slowly. "Eleanor's voice lingers here. Not always clear, not always kind, but it's hers. This inn, it holds on to those who leave something unfinished. She's trying to guide you, Clara, but she's not the only one here." Clara's throat tightened. She wanted to argue, to say it was just her imagination, the wind, anything but a voice from beyond. But the whisper had known her name, and the locket had burned against her skin. She set the teapot down, her hands trembling. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked. "You knew, and you let me go up there alone." "I didn't know if you'd hear her," Lila said, her voice soft but firm. "Not everyone does. This place chooses who it speaks to, and it chose you." Clara sank onto the bed, her mind reeling. What does she want? The ring, the journal, what am I supposed to do with them? Lila leaned forward, her eyes intense. Eleanor loved Samuel, but he broke her. He left her with promises and a ring, then vanished. She hid that ring because it was all she had left of him, but it wasn't just about love. There's something else, something she couldn't face. You need to find it. Clara's fingers brushed the journal, its leather cool under her touch. The journal mentions him, Samuel, over and over. She waited for him. Why didn't she just leave? Lila's gaze drifted to the window, her expression unreadable. She tried. But this inn, it doesn't let go easily. And Samuel, he wasn't what he seemed. He had secrets of his own, ones that tied him to this place. You'll find answers in the journal, but you'll need to look deeper. A sudden creak came from the hallway, sharp and deliberate. Clara's head snapped toward the door, her heart racing. Lila stood, moving silently to the door and peering out. "It's him," she muttered, her voice low. "Caleb." Clara's stomach twisted. "What does he want?" she asked, standing. The memory of Caleb's dark eyes, his knowing smile, sent a chill through her. "He's always been drawn to this inn," Lila said, closing the door and locking it. "He knew your mother, knew Samuel. He's not here by chance, Clara. He's looking for the same thing you are." Clara's hand went to the ring on the knit stand, its sapphire catching the lantern's light. "This?" she asked, holding it up. "Why would he care about a ring?" Layla shook her head. "It's not just the ring. It's what it leads to. Samuel left something else here, something Eleanor hid. Caleb thinks he's entitled to it, but he's wrong." Her voice hardened. "Don't trust him, Clara. He's charming, but he's got his own ghosts." The floor creaked again. Closer now, just outside the door. Clara's breath caught, and Lila raised a finger to her lips, signaling silence. The air grew heavy, the lantern flickering as if caught in a draft. For a moment, Clara thought she heard the whisper. "Again, Clara," but it was gone before she could be sure. Lila moved to the window, peering out. "He's gone for now," she said, her voice low. "But he'll be back. He always is." Clara's hands clenched, the ring biting into her palm. "I need to know what my mother was hiding," she said, her voice steady despite the fear curling in her chest. "I'm not stopping until I do." Lila nodded, a faint smile touching her lips. "You're like her, you know. Stubborn. Brave. Keep the journal close and don't let Caleb near it. He'll try to steer you wrong." Clara slipped the ring into her pocket and tucked the journal into her satchel. The locket at her throat felt heavier now, a tether to her mother's past and the secrets this inn held. She didn't know what she'd find, but the whisper in the attic, the ring, the journal, they were all pulling her deeper. And despite the fear, despite Caleb's shadow lurking in the night, she wasn't turning back. As Lila left, closing the door softly behind her, Clara sat on the bed, the journal in her lap. She opened it to a new page, her mother's words staring back at her. Asterisk. "The inn sees everything. It knows what I did. I'm sorry, Samuel. I had to." Clara's heart pounded. Whatever her mother had done, whatever she'd hidden, it was here, waiting. And Clara would find it. Clara lay awake, the inn's silence wrapping around her like a heavy quilt. The lantern on the knit stand flickered, its light casting shadows that seemed to shift just beyond her sight. The journal rested under her pillow, its pages a tether to her mother's voice, while the ring sat in her pocket, its sapphire a cold weight against her thigh. She couldn't shake the feeling that the inn was watching, its creaks and sighs too deliberate, too knowing. The whisper from the attic, "Clara, find it," echoed in her mind, soft but insistent, like a lullaby she couldn't ignore. She rose, unable to lie still, and paced the small room. The floorboards groaned under her steps, each sound amplifying the quiet. She stopped by the window, the plains outside swallowed by darkness, the stars faint pinpricks in the sky. Her reflection stared back, pale and drawn, the locket glinting at her throat. She touched it, her fingers tracing its familiar curves. It had been her mother's, a piece of Eleanor she'd carried all these years. Now it felt like more a key, a guide, a warning. She pulled the journal from under the pillow, its leather worn soft by time. The pages crinkled as she opened it, her mother's handwriting sharp and urgent. A new entry caught her eye. Asterisk, the locket holds more than memory. Samuel gave it to me, said it would keep me safe. But it's heavy now, heavier every day. Clara's breath caught. She unclasped the locket, her fingers trembling as she opened it. Inside was a tiny portrait of her mother, young and smiling, but behind it, tucked into the hinge, was a folded scrap of paper. She hadn't noticed it before, hadn't thought to look. She unfolded the paper, her heart racing. It was a map, hand-drawn, its lines faded but clear. It showed the inn's layout, lobby, rooms, attic, but a small mark stood out in the basement, labeled cellar. A single word was scrawled beside it. Truth. Clara's pulse quickened. The basement. Her mother had hidden something there, something tied to Samuel, to the ring, to the locket. She folded the map and slipped it into her pocket, her resolve hardening. She needed to go now before Caleb or anyone else could interfere. She grabbed the lantern, its flame steadying as she stepped into the hallway. The inn was dark, the air thick with the scent of dust and old roses. She moved quietly, her boots soft on the floorboards, avoiding the creaks she'd memorized. The stairs to the lobby were silent, but the air grew colder as she descended, the locket heavy against her chest. The lobby was empty, the chandelier's crystals catching the lantern's light in faint, ghostly glimmers. The basement door was tucked behind the counter, half hidden by a faded curtain. Clara hesitated, her hand on the knob. Lila hadn't mentioned the basement, and Caleb's cryptic warnings, "Not everything is as it seems," rang in her ears. But the map was her mother's, the word truth written in her hand. Clara turned the knob, the door opening with a low groan. The stairs descended into darkness, the air damp and heavy with the scent of earth. Her lantern cast a narrow beam, revealing stone walls slick with moisture. Each step echoed, the sound swallowed by the vastness below. At the bottom, the basement stretched out, a maze of crates and barrels, their shapes looming in the dim light. Cobwebs hung like veils, brushing against her face as she moved deeper. The map pointed to a corner, where a low door was set into the wall, its wood blackened with age. Clara knelt, her lantern illuminating a rusted lock. Her heart sank. The key from Lila was for the attic, not this. She ran her fingers over the lock, searching for a way in, when a soft click came from behind her. She spun, holding the lantern high, but the basement was empty. The air felt heavier now, pressing against her skin. "Clara." The whisper came again, soft and clear, from the direction of the door. Her breath caught, the locket burning against her chest. She turned back to the door, her hands trembling as she touched the lock. It was loose, the mechanism broken, as if someone or something had opened it for her. She pushed the door, its hinges screaming, and stepped into a small, damp room. Inside, the air was thick, the scent of roses stronger now, almost cloying. A single crate sat in the center, its lid ajar. Clara knelt beside it, her lantern casting flickering light over its contents. A bundle of letters tied with twine, a faded photograph, and a small velvet pouch. She lifted the photograph first, her hands shaking. It showed her mother, young and radiant, standing beside a man with dark hair and a crooked smile. Samuel, she knew without question. His arm was around Eleanor, their faces lit with a joy Clara had never seen in her mother's eyes. She set the photograph aside and opened the pouch. Inside was a second ring, identical to the one in her pocket, but its sapphire was cracked, the band tarnished. Clara's chest tightened. 2 rings, one hidden in the attic, one here. Why? She untied the letters, her mother's handwriting spilling across the pages. The first one began, Samuel, you promised forever, but you lied. I can't forgive you, but I can't let you go. Clara's eyes burned, her mother's pain raw and alive in the words. She was about to read more when a shadow moved behind her, swift and silent. She spun, the lantern swinging, and caught a glimpse of a figure tall, lean, the brim of a hat, low over dark eyes. Caleb. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, her voice sharp in the small space. Caleb stepped into the light, his smile slow and easy. "Same as you, Clara." Looking for answers. His eyes flicked to the crate, to the letters in her hand. "You're getting close, aren't you?" Clara stood, clutching the letters to her chest. "Stay back," she said, her voice steady despite the fear curling in her gut. "This is mine. My mother's." Caleb raised his hands, his smile never fading. "I don't want to take it from you, but you don't know the whole story. Samuel wasn't just some drifter. He was part of this inn, same as Eleanor. And what they left behind, it's bigger than you think." The whisper came again, softer now, from the shadows. "Clara." Caleb's head tilted, as if he'd heard it too. His smile faltered just for a moment. "You hear her, don't you?" he said, his voice low. "She's trying to tell you something, but you need to be careful who you listen to." Clara's heart pounded, the locket hot against her skin. She didn't trust Caleb, but his words rang true. The inn was alive with secrets, and her mother's voice was only one of them. She backed toward the door, the letters and pouch in her hands. "I'll find out myself," she said, her voice firm. "I don't need you." Caleb's eyes darkened, but he didn't move. "You will," he said softly. "Sooner or later." Clara turned and fled, the basement's chill clinging to her as she climbed the stairs. The letters burned in her hands, her mother's words a weight she couldn't shake. She didn't know what Caleb wanted or what the inn was hiding, but she was closer now, and she wouldn't stop until she found the truth. Clara clutched the letters and the velvet pouch as she hurried back to her room, the lantern's light swaying with her steps. The inn's shadows seemed to follow, stretching long and thin across the walls. Her heart hadn't stopped racing since the basement. Caleb's words, "It's bigger than you think," looping in her mind. The locket at her throat pulsed with warmth, and the whisper from the shadows lingered, her name spoken in a voice that felt like her mother's, but wasn't quite. She locked the door behind her, her hands trembling as she set the lantern on the knit stand. The room felt smaller now, the air thick with the inn's watchful presence. She sank onto the bed, spreading the letters before her. There were 5, each in her mother's handwriting, the ink faded but legible. The photograph of Eleanor and Samuel lay beside them, their smiles frozen in a moment Clara could barely imagine. She picked up the first letter, her fingers brushing the twine that had bound it. The words were raw, jagged, as if written in a rush. Asterisk Samuel, you said you'd come back. I waited in the attic, in the cellar, listening for you. The inn knows you lied. It knows everything. Clara's chest ached. Her mother's pain was palpable, spilling across the page like a wound. She read on, each letter a piece of a story she hadn't known. Eleanor had loved Samuel fiercely, a love that burned bright and fast in the summer of 1895. He'd been a guest at the inn, a charming drifter with stories of the West, promising her a life beyond the plains. But he'd left without warning, taking her trust and leaving the ring, the one now in Clara's pocket, and the locket. The second ring, the one with the cracked sapphire, wasn't mentioned. Clara frowned, turning it over in her hand. Why 2 rings? And why hide one in the cellar? The final letter was different, its tone colder. Asterisk, I found it, Samuel. Your secret. I hid it where you'll never look. The inn will keep it safe, and you'll never hurt me again. Clara's breath caught. A secret hidden in the inn. Not the rings, not the locket, something else. She opened the velvet pouch again, hoping for a clue, but it held only the ring. The map from the locket, tucked in her pocket, marked the cellar with truth, but she'd found the letters. Was that the truth her mother meant? Or was there more? A soft creak came from the hallway, pulling her from her thoughts. She froze, her eyes on the door. The inn was never truly quiet, but this sound was deliberate, like a footstep testing the floor. Layla? She called softly, her voice barely carrying. No answer. She stood, slipping the letters into her satchel beside the journal. The lantern flickered, casting wild shadows, and she grabbed it, holding it high as she approached the door. She opened it a crack, peering into the dark hallway. The air was cold, heavy with the scent of roses that seemed to follow her now. A shadow moved at the far end, near the staircase, too tall to be Lila. Clara's heart thudded. Caleb, she said, her voice firm despite the fear curling in her gut. I know it's you. The shadow paused, then stepped into the faint light spilling from her room. Caleb's hat was low, his eyes glinting beneath the brim. You're a hard one to keep up with, he said, his voice low and smooth. Find something interesting down there? Clara's hand tightened on the door. Why are you following me? She asked, keeping her tone steady. What do you want with my mother's things? Caleb leaned against the wall, his posture casual, but his eyes sharp. Not her things, Clara, his. Samuel's. He left more than just trinkets in this inn, and I've been looking for it longer than you've been alive. He took a step closer, and Clara tensed, ready to slam the door. Relax, he said, raising a hand. I ain't here to hurt you, but you're stirring things up, and not everything in this place is friendly. The whisper came again, soft and sudden. Clara. It was closer this time, from the hallway behind Caleb. His head tilted, as if he'd heard it too, and his smile faded. You hear that, don't you? He said, his voice quieter now. That's her, Eleanor. She's been here all along. Clara's throat tightened. What does she want? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Caleb's eyes darkened. She wants you to finish what she started. But you gotta be careful. Samuel's still here too, in his own way, and he don't like being crossed. Clara's hand went to the locket, its warmth grounding her. Samuel's gone, she said, her voice firm. He left her. He's not here. Caleb's laugh was low, almost sad. You think leaving means gone? This end don't let go that easy. You found his ring, didn't you? Both of Ian? He nodded toward her pocket, and Clara's stomach twisted. How did he know about the second ring? What do you know about them? She asked, stepping into the hallway, the lantern casting his face in sharp relief. Enough, he said, his eyes flicking to her satchel. Those rings are a promise, Clara. One he kept, one he broke. But they're tied to something bigger, something he hid, something Eleanor found. You're close, but you're not there yet. The whisper came again, sharper now, asterisk find it. Clara's breath hitched, and Caleb's eyes narrowed, as if he'd heard it, too. "You better move fast," he said, stepping back. "This place is waking up and it's got a long memory." He turned and disappeared down the stairs, his footsteps fading into the inn's silence. Clara stood frozen, the whisper echoing in her ears. She didn't trust Caleb, but his words rang true. The inn was alive, and her mother's voice was guiding her. She returned to her room, locking the door, and pulled the map from her pocket. The cellar was marked, but there was another faint line, barely visible, leading to a room on the first floor, unlabeled. She hadn't noticed it before. She grabbed the lantern and satchel, her resolve hardening. The inn was speaking, and she would listen. The first floor room wasn't far, just past the lobby, behind the fireplace. She moved quickly, the locket warm against her chest, the rings heavy in her pocket. The inn's shadows seemed to watch, but she didn't falter. Whatever her mother had hidden, whatever Samuel had left, she was closer now, and she wouldn't stop until she found it. Clara's lantern cast a trembling glow as she crept through the inn's lobby, the air thick with the scent of dust and that persistent trace of roses. The map from the locket was clutched in her hand, its faint lines guiding her to a room on the first floor, tucked behind the fireplace. The locket at her throat pulsed with warmth, a steady rhythm that felt like a heartbeat, urging her forward. Caleb's words, "Samuel's still here," in his own way, clung to her mind, but she pushed them aside. The whisper, her mother's voice, was clearer now, a soft echo in her ears. Find it. She wouldn't stop, not with the truth so close. The fireplace loomed ahead, its cracked mirror reflecting her lantern's light in fractured glimmers. She moved behind it, her boots soft on the floorboards, and found a narrow door, its paint peeling, its knob tarnished. The map's line ended here, no label, just a mark. Clara's heart thudded as she turned the knob, expecting resistance, but the door opened smoothly, revealing a small, windowless room. The air inside was stale, heavy with the weight of years. Her lantern illuminated shelves lined with dusty ledgers, a desk cluttered with papers, and a single chair, its cushion sagging. This must have been the innkeeper's office, long abandoned. She stepped inside, setting the lantern on the desk. The shelves held records of guests, their names faded but legible, dating back decades. She scanned them, her fingers brushing the spines, until one caught her eye. A ledger from 1895, the year her mother's letters mentioned Samuel. She pulled it down, dust rising in a cloud, and opened it. Pages of names and dates blurred past, but one entry stopped her cold. Samuel Kane, Room 12, July 1895. Below it, in a different hand, was a note, left without settling. E says to let it go, Clara's breath caught. E for Eleanor. Her mother had been here, tied to Samuel, even in the inn's records. She set the ledger aside and searched the desk, her hands sifting through brittle papers and broken pens. In the bottom drawer, beneath a stack of receipts, she found a small tin box, its lid engraved with a rose. Her pulse quickened. The scent of roses had followed her through the inn, faint but constant. She opened the box, her fingers trembling, and found a single key inside, not brass like the attic key, but silver, delicate, with a tiny sapphire embedded in its bow. It matched the rings, one whole, one cracked. Clara's chest tightened. Another piece of the puzzle, another secret her mother had hidden. She held the key up, its sapphire catching the lantern's light. What did it open? The map hadn't marked anything beyond this room, but the word truth from the cellar lingered in her mind. The letters, the rings, the locket, now this key. They were all connected, leading her deeper into the inn's heart. She slipped the key into her pocket, next to the rings, and turned back to the ledger. There had to be more. A soft creak came from the doorway, and Clara froze, her hand on the tin box. The air shifted, colder now, the scent of roses sharper. "Lila?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. No answer. She raised the lantern, its light spilling into the hallway, but it was empty. The inn was playing tricks again, or someone was watching. Caleb's face flashed in her mind, his dark eyes and knowing smile. She didn't trust him, but he knew too much about Samuel, about the inn, about her mother. She stepped into the hallway, the lantern held high. The lobby was still, the chandelier's crystals glinting faintly. But the air felt different, heavier, as if the inn were holding its breath. She moved toward the staircase, her steps careful, when the whisper came again. "Clara." It was closer, clearer, coming from above. Her mother's voice, soft but urgent, pulling her upward. She hesitated, glancing back at the office door. The key in her pocket felt heavy, its purpose unknown, but the whisper was a call she couldn't ignore. She climbed the stairs, each step creaking under her weight. The second-floor hallway stretched into shadow, the doors closed, their numbers faded but visible. The whisper came again from the end of the hall, near room 12, Samuel's room. Clara's heart pounded, but she moved toward it, the locket warm against her chest. The door to room 12 was ajar, a sliver of moonlight spilling through a cracked window inside. She pushed it open, the hinges groaning, and stepped into the room. It was small, sparsely furnished, a bed with a frayed quilt, a dresser, a chair by the window. The air was cold, the scent of roses overwhelming now, as if the room itself were breathing it. Clara's lantern cast long shadows, and she set it on the dresser, her eyes scanning for anything tied to Samuel or her mother. A faint scratch on the floor caught her attention, near the bed. She knelt, running her fingers over the wood, and found a loose floorboard, its edges worn smooth. Her breath hitched as she pried it up, revealing a small compartment. Inside was a leather pouch, its surface cracked with age. She opened it, her hands trembling, and found a single letter sealed with wax, addressed to Eleanor. The handwriting wasn't her mother's, it was bolder, more deliberate. Samuel's. Clara broke the seal, her heart racing, and read, "Eleanor, I didn't lie. I meant every word. But I can't stay. Keep it safe for us. It's in the garden, under the rose. The letter ended abruptly, no signature, just those words. Clara's mind spun. The garden, the rose, the scent that followed her, the tin box engraved with a rose, it all pointed outside. But what was it? Another secret, another promise? She slipped the letter into her satchel, her resolve hardening. The key, the rings, the letter, they were leading her somewhere, and she was close. A shadow moved in the doorway, swift and silent. Clara spun, her lantern swinging, and saw Caleb leaning against the frame, his hat low, his eyes glinting. "You're quick," he said, his voice low and smooth. "Found his letter, didn't you?" Clara stood, clutching the satchel. "Why are you here?" she demanded, her voice sharp. "What do you want with this?" Caleb stepped inside, his boots soft on the floor. "Same thing you do, Clara." The truth. "Samuel left something in that garden, and I've been looking for it since he disappeared." "You're just beating me to it." His smile was gone, his eyes intense. "But you don't know what you're digging up. It's not just your mother's story, it's his too." The whisper came again, soft and urgent. "Clara." It was from the window, from the garden below. Caleb's head tilted, his eyes narrowing. "She's calling you," he said. "You gonna listen?" Clara's hand went to the locket, its warmth steadying her. She didn't trust Caleb, but the whisper was her mother's, and the letter was Samuel's. The garden was next. She pushed past him, her lantern in hand, and headed for the stairs. The inn's secrets were unraveling, and she was too close to stop now. Clara stepped out into the night, the inn's door creaking shut behind her. The air was sharp, carrying the scent of dry grass and the faint, persistent trace of roses. Her lantern cast a pale glow, illuminating the overgrown garden that sprawled behind the inn. It was a tangle of weeds and thorny vines, the remnants of what might have once been beautiful. The moon hung low, its light silvering the leaves, and Clara's heart thudded as she clutched the satchel with her mother's journal, the letters, and Samuel's note. The silver key, the rings, and the locket in her pocket felt heavier now, each a piece of a puzzle pointing to this place. The whisper, "Clara," had come from here, her mother's voice soft but urgent, pulling her toward the garden. Samuel's letter had been clear. "It's in the garden, under the rose." Clara scanned the chaos of vines and brambles, searching for anything resembling a rose. The inn loomed behind her, its windows dark, but she felt its presence, as if it were watching, waiting. She moved deeper into the garden, her boots sinking into the soft earth, the lantern's light catching on gnarled branches and faded blooms. The scent of roses grew stronger, guiding her like a thread through the dark. Near the garden's edge, where the ground sloped toward a dry creek bed, she found a single rosebush, its petals pale and wilted but unmistakable. It stood alone, its thorns sharp, its roots twisting into the earth. Clara knelt, setting the lantern beside her, and ran her hands over the soil. It was loose, recently disturbed, as if someone else had been here. Her stomach twisted. Caleb. He'd been too close, too knowing, always one step behind her. Had he already found what she was looking for? She dug with her hands, the earth cold and damp, her fingers brushing roots and stones. The locket at her throat warmed, its pulse steady, as if urging her on. The whisper came again, softer now from the air around her. "Find it." Clara's breath hitched, her hands moving faster. Beneath a tangle of roots, her fingers grazed something hard, a metal box. No bigger than a book, its surface etched with the same rose pattern as the tin in the office. Her heart raced as she pulled it free, dirt clinging to its edges. She brushed the soil away, her lantern illuminating the box's rusted lock. The silver key from the office fit perfectly, its sapphire glinting as she turned it. The lock clicked, and the lid opened with a groan. Inside was a single object, a small leather-bound book, its cover worn but intact, its pages thick with dust. Clara lifted it, her hands trembling, and opened it to the first page. Samuel's handwriting stared back at her, bold and deliberate. Asterisk to Eleanor, my heart. This is the truth I couldn't say, asterisk. Clara's chest tightened. Another journal, but this one was Samuel's. She flipped through the pages, her eyes catching fragments. Asterisk, I didn't want to leave you. They're after me. The inn will keep it safe. The entries were hurried, some smudged, as if written in fear. One page stood out, its words underlined. Asterisk, the deed is yours, Eleanor. It's all I have left. Keep it hidden. A deed? Clara frowned, turning the pages, but there was no paper, no document, just Samuel's words, cryptic and incomplete. A twig snapped behind her, sharp in the quiet. Clara spun, clutching the book to her chest, her lantern swinging. Caleb stood at the garden's edge, his hat low, his eyes glinting in the moonlight. You found it, he said, his voice low, almost reverent. Didn't think you'd get this far. Clara stood, her grip tightening on the book. Stay back, she said, her voice steady despite the fear curling in her gut. This is mine. My mother's? Caleb stepped closer, his boots silent on the grass. It's not just hers, Clara. It's Samuel's, too. That book, those words, they're worth more than you know. His eyes flicked to the rosebush, to the disturbed earth. You read it yet? You know what he was hiding? Clara's hand went to the locket, its warmth grounding her. A deed, she said, her voice firm. He left her something, but it's not here. Caleb's smile was slow, knowing. Smart girl. The deed ain't in the book, it's what the book points to. Samuel wasn't just a drifter. He owned land, Clara. Land worth a fortune out west. He meant to give it to Eleanor, but he never got the chance. Clara's mind raced. A deed to land? Her mother had never spoken of wealth, never hinted at anything beyond their quiet life in Omaha. Why didn't he give it to her? She asked, stepping back, the lantern's light trembling between them. Caleb's eyes darkened. He was running. Men like him always are. Debts, enemies, doesn't matter. He hid the deed, told Eleanor where to find it, but she never did. She hid his book instead, kept his secret. He nodded toward the book in her hands. That's the key, Clara. It'll tell you where. The whisper came again, soft and urgent. Clara. It was from the inn, now from the open door behind her. Caleb's head tilted, his smile fading. She's still talking to you, ain't she? He said, his voice low. Eleanor's not done with this place. Or with you? Clara's heart pounded, the locket hot against her skin. She didn't trust Caleb, but his words fit the pieces she'd found: the rings, the locket, the letters, now this book. Samuel had left her mother a fortune, hidden somewhere in the inn's secrets. But why had Eleanor buried it all? Why not claim it? I'll find it myself, Clara said, her voice sharp. She backed toward the inn, the book clutched tight. Stay away from me, Caleb. He raised his hands, his smile returning. I ain't your enemy, Clara, but you're not the only one looking. This inn's got a long memory, and it don't forget a debt. He turned, melting into the shadows of the garden, his footsteps fading into the night. Clara hurried inside, locking the door behind her. The inn was quiet, but the air felt alive, the scent of roses clinging to her. She sank onto the lobby's bench, opening Samuel's book again. The final entry was a single line, asterisk, the heart of the inn holds it. Trust the rose. Clara's breath caught. The heart of the inn. The rose. She thought of the fireplace, its rose-etched tin box, the office behind it. Was that the heart? Or was there more? The locket pulsed, the whisper soft in her ears, find it. Clara stood, her resolve hardening. The inn was speaking, her mother guiding her. She didn't know what Caleb wanted, or what debts Samuel had left, but the truth was close. She'd find the deed for her mother, for herself, and she wouldn't let the inn or Caleb stop her. Clara stood in the inn's lobby, the lantern's glow casting flickering shadows across the chandelier's dulled crystals. Samuel's book rested in her hands, its final words asterisk, the heart of the inn holds it. Trust the rose, asterisk burning in her mind. The scent of roses lingered, faint but persistent, as if woven into the inn's very walls. The locket at her throat pulsed softly, a steady warmth that felt like her mother's presence, guiding her. The whisper hadn't returned since the garden, but its echo, find it, drove her forward. She was close, closer than she'd ever been, to unraveling her mother's secret and Samuel's promise. The heart of the inn. Clara's eyes drifted to the fireplace, its cracked mirror reflecting her pale face. The tin box in the office behind it, etched with a rose, had held the silver key. Was that the heart Samuel meant? Or was it deeper, hidden in the inn's bones? She opened Samuel's book again, scanning the pages for anything she'd missed. His entries were scattered, some poetic, some frantic, asterisk. The rose is her heart, and mine. They'll come for it, but the inn will keep it safe. Clara frowned. The rose wasn't just the garden's bush, it was a symbol, a thread tying Samuel, Eleanor, and this place together. She moved to the fireplace, her boots soft on the floorboards. The office door stood ajar, its darkness spilling into the lobby. She stepped inside, setting the lantern on the desk, and ran her hands over the walls, searching for anything out of place. The shelves held only ledgers, the desk only papers, but the rose scent was stronger here, almost cloying. She knelt by the fireplace's base, its stones cold under her fingers, and noticed a faint carving, a rose, no bigger than her thumb, etched into a cornerstone. Her heart raced. She pressed it, expecting a click, a hidden panel, but nothing happened. A soft creak came from the lobby, deliberate and slow. Clara froze, her hand on the stone. "Lila?" she whispered, her voice barely carrying. No answer. She stood, grabbing the lantern, and peered into the lobby. The air was heavy, the chandelier's crystals glinting faintly. A shadow moved near the staircase, tall and lean, the brim of a hat low. "Caleb, you don't give up, do you?" he said, stepping into the lantern's light. His voice was low, almost amused, but his eyes were sharp, watching her every move. "What did you find in that book?" Clara's grip tightened on the lantern, Samuel's book tucked under her arm. "Nothing you need to know," she said, her voice steady despite the unease curling in her chest. "Why are you still here, Caleb? What's this deed to you?" Caleb leaned against the counter, his smile slow and knowing. "It's not just a deed, Clara. It's freedom. Samuel owed people bad people. That land was his way out, but he never got to use it. He gave it to Eleanor, or tried to, but she hid it too well." His eyes flicked to the fireplace, to the office door. "You're close, though. I can feel it. Clara's hand went to the locket, its warmth grounding her. If it's hers, it's mine, she said, stepping back. Not yours. Caleb's smile faded, his voice softening. I ain't your enemy, Clara, but you're stirring up more than you know. This inn, it don't just hold secrets. It holds grudges. Samuel's, Eleanor's, mine. He paused, his eyes narrowing. You hear her still, don't you? Eleanor's voice? Clara's breath caught. She didn't answer, but the whisper's echo lingered in her mind. Caleb nodded, as if her silence confirmed it. She's leading you, but she's scared, too. Scared of what you'll find. Scared of him? Him? Clara asked, her voice sharp. Samuel? Caleb's eyes darkened. He's here, Clara. Not like her, not so gentle. He's angry. Always was. He stepped closer, and Clara raised the lantern, its light a barrier between them. You find that deed, you'll see. But you gotta be ready for what comes with it. The whisper came again, soft and urgent. Clara. It was from the fireplace, from the stone with the rose. Caleb's head tilted, his expression unreadable. She's calling, he said. You gonna listen? Clara's heart pounded, the locket hot against her skin. She didn't trust Caleb, but his words fit the inn's strange rhythm, the whispers, the roses, the weight of secrets. She turned back to the fireplace, kneeling again, her fingers tracing the rose carving. This time she noticed a faint seam around the stone, barely visible. She pressed harder, and something clicked, deep and hollow. The stone shifted, revealing a small cavity. Inside was a folded parchment, its edges brittle with age. Clara's hands trembled as she pulled it out, unfolding it carefully. It was a deed, written in formal script, granting land in Wyoming to Clara Everett. Samuel's signature was at the bottom, bold and clear, dated August 1895. Clara's chest tightened. This was it, the truth her mother had hidden, the promise Samuel had left. But why bury it here in the inn's heart? Caleb's voice came from behind her, low and tense. You found it. He stepped closer, his shadow falling over her. Let me see it, Clara. She stood, clutching the deed to her chest. No, she said, her voice firm. This is hers. Mine. You've got no claim to it. Caleb's eyes narrowed, but he didn't move. You don't know what you're holding, he said. That deed's got blood on it, Samuel's, maybe Eleanor's. You take it, you take their debts too. The whisper came again, sharper now, Clara. It was from the lobby, from the staircase. Caleb's head turned, his hand going to his coat, as if reaching for something. She's not happy, he muttered. You're waking things up. Clara's heart raced, the locket burning against her skin. She didn't know what Caleb meant by debts, but the deed was her mother's, a piece of her life Clara had never known. She slipped it into her satchel beside Samuel's book and backed toward the staircase. Stay away from me, she said, her voice steady. I mean it. Caleb raised his hands, his smile returning, but it didn't reach his eyes. I'll be around, he said. You'll need me when it all comes crashing down. He turned and slipped into the shadows, his footsteps fading into the inn's silence. Clara climbed the stairs, her lantern trembling in her hand. The deed, the book, the rings, they were all pieces of a story her mother had buried. But Caleb's words, their debts, clung to her, a warning she couldn't shake. The locket pulsed, the whisper soft in her ears. Find it. She didn't know what was left to find, but the inn wasn't done with her. And neither, it seemed, was Samuel. Clara sat on the bed in her room, the lantern's soft glow casting shadows that danced across the walls. The deed lay before her, its parchment brittle, Eleanor's name written in elegant script beside Samuel's bold signature. The satchel beside her held the rest, her mother's journal, Samuel's book, the letters, the rings, the silver key. The locket at her throat was warm, a steady pulse that felt like a tether to her mother's voice. The whisper hadn't returned since the fireplace, but its echo, Clara, lingered, urging her to piece together the truth. The inn was quiet now, but its silence felt heavy, expectant, as if waiting for her next move. She opened Samuel's book again, her fingers tracing his hurried words. Asterisk, the deed is yours, Eleanor. It's all I have left, asterisk. The land in Wyoming was real, a fortune her mother had never claimed. But why hide it? Why bury the deed, the rings, the locket's map, and Samuel's book in the inn's shadows? Clara's eyes drifted to the final line. Asterisk, the heart of the inn holds it. Trust the rose. The deed had been in the fireplace, under the rose-carved stone. Was that the end? Or was there more her mother wanted her to find? The letters offered clues, but they were raw, fragmented. One stood out, its words colder than the rest. Asterisk, I found it, Samuel. Your secret. I hid it where you'll never look. Clara's chest tightened. The deed was part of it, but Samuel's secret, what he'd been running from, felt bigger, heavier. Caleb's warning echoed in her mind. That deed's got blood on it. Debts, enemies, a life Eleanor had fled. Clara's fingers brushed the locket, its warmth steadying her. Whatever her mother had hidden, it was tied to Samuel's past, and the inn knew it all. A soft knock at the door broke her thoughts. Clara? Lila's voice, low and cautious, came through the wood. Clara stood, slipping the deed into the satchel, and opened the door. Lila's pale eyes searched her face, her silver hair catching the lantern's light. You've been busy, she said, stepping inside. I felt at the inn's stirring. What did you find? Clara hesitated, then pulled the deed from the satchel, holding it out. This, she said. Samuel left it for her. Land in Wyoming. Why didn't she take it, Lila? Why hide it here? Lila's fingers brushed the parchment, her expression unreadable. She was scared, she said softly. Not just of Samuel, but of what came with him. He wasn't just a drifter, Clara. He had enemies, men who wanted that land or what it stood for. Eleanor thought hiding it would keep her safe. Keep you safe. Clara's throat tightened. Safe from what? Debts? People like Caleb? Lila's eyes narrowed at Caleb's name. He told you, didn't he? About the blood on that deed. She sank into the chair, her hands clasped tightly. Caleb was here back then, Clara. He worked at the inn, same as Eleanor. He knew Samuel, knew what he was running from. He's been chasing that deed ever since, thinking it's his way out. Clara's stomach twisted. Out of what? She asked, sitting on the bed, the satchel close. Lila's gaze drifted to the window, where the plains stretched into darkness. Guilt, she said. Caleb betrayed Samuel, told those men where to find him. Samuel got away, but he never came back for Eleanor. Caleb's been carrying that weight ever since, thinking the deed will make it right. Clara's mind raced. Caleb's cryptic words, his insistence that she'd need him, it all fit. He wasn't just after the deed. He was after redemption. But the whisper, her mother's voice, hadn't mentioned Caleb. It had called her, guided her to the rings, the book, the deed. "What about my mother?" Clara asked, her voice quiet. "Why is she still here, Lila? Why is she speaking to me?" Lila's eyes softened, but there was sadness there too. "She's unfinished, Clara. She loved Samuel, but she hated him too for leaving, for lying. She hid his secret to protect you, but it tied her to this place. Her voice, it's her way of letting go through you." Clara's hand went to the locket, its warmth a quiet comfort. "What's left to find?" she asked. "The deed's here. The book, the rings, what else is there?" Lila leaned forward, her voice low. "Samuel's secret. The deed's only part of it. He hid something else. Something Eleanor found and buried deeper. The inn knows, Clara. It's why it's waking up." A creak came from the hallway, sharp and deliberate. Clara's head snapped toward the door, her heart racing. Lila stood, moving silently to the window, peering into the night. "It's him," she muttered. "Caleb's close." Clara's grip tightened on the satchel. "What does he want with it?" she asked, standing. "If it's not just the deed, what's he after?" Lila turned, her eyes intense. "Power," she said. "Samuel's secret wasn't just land. It was leverage, something those men wanted, something worth killing for. Caleb thinks it's still here, and he thinks you'll lead him to it." The whisper came again, soft and clear. "Clara." It was from the hallway, from the staircase below. Lila's head tilted, her expression tightening. "She's calling you," she said. "You're close, Clara. But be careful. The inn's not just Eleanor's anymore." Clara's heart pounded, the locket hot against her skin. She didn't know what Samuel's secret was, but the whisper was her mother's, and it was guiding her. She grabbed the lantern, slipping the satchel over her shoulder. "I need to finish this," she said, her voice steady. "For her." Lila nodded, but her eyes were worried. "Keep the book close," she said. "And don't let Caleb near it. He'll twist it, same as he twisted Samuel." Clara stepped into the hallway, the lantern's light trembling in her hand. The inn was dark, the air heavy with roses and dust. The whisper came again from the lobby, pulling her downward. She descended the stairs, each creak amplifying the silence. The lobby was empty, but the fireplace's mirror caught her reflection, her face pale, the locket glinting. She moved toward it, Samuel's words echoing, "The heart of the inn." The rose-carved stone was still loose, the cavity empty now. But the whisper was louder, coming from the floor itself. Clara knelt, her fingers brushing the boards, and found another seam hidden beneath the hearth. She pried it up, revealing a small compartment. Inside was a single envelope, sealed with wax, addressed to Eleanor in Samuel's hand. Clara's breath caught. Another letter, another secret. She opened it, her hands trembling. The words were brief, desperate. Asterisk Eleanor, I'm sorry. They're coming. The box is yours, keep it safe. It's under the rose in the heart. Clara frowned. The box? The deeds box was in the garden, the tin in the office. What was this? She turned the envelope over, and a small, folded paper fell out, a sketch of the inn's fireplace. with a rose marked at its base. The heart of the inn again. The whisper came, sharp and urgent. Clara. It was from the fireplace, from the stone. She was close. But to what? Clara knelt before the fireplace, the lantern's glow casting trembling shadows across the inn's lobby. The envelope from the hidden compartment rested in her hands, Samuel's final words to her mother echoing in her mind. Asterisk, the box is yours, keep it safe. It's under the rose in the heart. Asterisk. The sketch of the fireplace with its rose-marked stone was clutched in her fingers, its lines sharp despite the years. The locket at her throat burned, a steady warmth that felt like her mother's presence, urging her forward. The whisper, Clara, had come from the stone itself, clear and insistent, as if the inn were speaking through her mother's voice. She was so close now, the truth within reach. The rose-carved stone was still loose from where she'd found the deed, its cavity empty. But the sketch pointed to something deeper, something hidden under the rose. Clara ran her fingers over the hearth's base, searching for another seam, another secret. The air was heavy, thick, with the scent of roses that had followed her through the inn attic, cellar, garden, and now here. The satchel at her side held everything: the deed, Samuel's book, her mother's journal, the letters, the rings, the silver key. Each piece a thread in a tapestry she was only beginning to understand. Her fingers caught on a faint ridge beneath the stone, barely noticeable. She pressed, and a soft click echoed, deep and hollow. The hearth shifted slightly, revealing a narrow slot, just wide enough for her hand. Clara's heart raced as she reached inside, her fingers brushing something cold and smooth, a small metal box, its surface etched with a rose, identical to the one in the garden but smaller, more delicate. She pulled it free, her breath catching. The box was locked, but the silver key from the office, with its sapphire, fit perfectly. She turned it, the lock clicking open with a sound that seemed to ripple through the inn. Inside was a single object, a folded letter, its wax seal broken, and a tiny vial of dried rose petals, their scent faint but unmistakable. Clara unfolded the letter, her hands trembling. Samuel's handwriting, hurried and desperate, filled the page. Asterisk, Eleanor, this is the last of me. The deed was my promise, but this is my truth. They'll come for it, but you're stronger than they know. Keep it hidden for her. For Clara. Asterisk. Below, in her mother's hand, was a single line. Asterisk, I did it for you, my love. I'm sorry. Asterisk. Clara's eyes burned, her throat tight. For her. Her mother had hidden this, buried Samuel's truth to protect her, to keep her safe from whatever hunted him. But what was it? The vial of petals felt light, almost insignificant, yet it was locked away, guarded by the inn's heart. She held it up, the lantern's light catching the glass, and noticed a faint inscription on its base. Red Hollow, 1895. The town, the year Samuel left. The year her mother's life changed. A creak came from the staircase, sharp and deliberate. Clara's head snapped up, her hand closing around the vial. The lobby was dark, the chandelier's crystals glinting faintly, but the air felt alive, charged. Caleb, she said, her voice steady despite the fear curling in her gut. I know you're there. He stepped into the light, his hat low, his eyes glinting with something like hunger. You found it, he said, his voice low, almost reverent. The last piece. What's in the box, Clara? Clara stood, slipping the vial and letter into her satchel. "It's not yours," she said, her voice firm. "You've been chasing this for years, haven't you? Samuel's truth. What is it, Caleb? What's worth all this?" Caleb's smile was thin, his eyes fixed on the satchel. "You read the letter, didn't you?" He told her what it is. "Not just land, Clara. Power. That veil, those petals, they're from a claim, a mine on that Wyoming land. Gold, maybe more. Samuel found it, but he crossed the wrong people. They wanted it, and he ran." Clara's heart pounded, the locket hot against her skin. A mine. A fortune beyond the land itself, hidden in a vial of dried petals. Her mother had known, had hidden it to keep it from those men and from Caleb. "Why do you want it?" she asked, stepping back, the fireplace at her side. "You betrayed him. You said it yourself." Caleb's smile faded, his eyes darkening. "I was young, Clara. Stupid. I thought turning him over would save me. But it didn't. I've been stuck here, same as Eleanor, chasing what he left behind. That vial, it's my way out." The whisper came again, sharp and urgent. "Clara." It was from the fireplace, from the empty slot. Caleb's head tilted, his hand twitching toward his coat. "She's still talking," he said, his voice low. "She don't want me near it, does she?" Clara's hand went to the locket, its warmth grounding her. "She wants me to finish this," she said. "Not you." She backed toward the office door, her lantern trembling. The vial, the deed, the rings, they were her mother's legacy, not Caleb's redemption. He stepped closer, his voice soft but edged. "Give it to me, Clara. You don't know what you're holding. Those men, they're still out there. They'll come for you, same as they came for Samuel." The whisper came again, louder now, "Clara." It was her mother's voice, clear and fierce, from the air around her. The locket burned, and for a moment, Clara felt a presence warm, familiar, like a hand on her shoulder. She met Caleb's eyes, her resolve hardening. "I'm not afraid," she said. "This is hers. Mine. You won't take it." Caleb's hand moved to his coat, but the inn groaned, a deep, shuddering sound that made him freeze. The chandelier swayed, its crystals clinking, and the air grew cold, the scent of roses overwhelming. "She's here," Caleb whispered, his eyes wide. "Eleanor." Clara didn't look back. She turned and ran for the office, slamming the door and locking it. Her heart raced, the satchel heavy at her side. The vial, the letter, the deed, they were the truth. Samuel's secret, her mother's sacrifice. She didn't know what came next, but the inn was alive, her mother's voice guiding her. She'd protect it, whatever it was, whatever it cost. The whisper came again, soft now from the walls, "Clara." It was a promise, a farewell. She clutched the locket, her mother's love steady in its warmth. One more step, one more truth. She was ready. Clara leaned against the locked office door, her breath shallow, the lantern's light trembling in her hand. The end's groan still echoed in her ears, a deep rumble that had shaken Caleb's nerve and given her a moment to escape. The satchel at her side felt heavier now, weighed down by the deed, Samuel's book, her mother's journal, the letters, the rings, and the vial of rose petals, each a piece of a truth she'd fought to uncover. The locket at her throat burned, its warmth a steady pulse, as if her mother were standing beside her, whispering her name. The inn was alive, its air thick with roses and memory, and Clara knew this was the end. The heart of the inn had given up its final secret. She set the lantern on the desk, its glow illuminating the small room. The rose-etched tin box, the ledgers, the cracked walls all seemed to watch her, waiting. She opened the satchel, pulling out the vial and Samuel's letter. The petals inside gleamed faintly, their dried edges catching the light. Red Hollow, 1895, the inscription read, tying them to the mine, to the fortune Samuel had found and hidden. Her mother's note, scrawled on his letter asterisk, I did it for you, my love. I'm sorry asterisk felt like a confession, a weight Eleanor had carried alone. Clara opened Samuel's book, her fingers tracing his final words. Asterisk, the box is yours. Keep it safe, asterisk. The box was here, in the office, its rose carving matching the vial, the garden, the hearth. She knelt by the fireplace's base again, her hands brushing the rose-carved stone. The whisper came soft and clear, Clara. It was her mother's voice, not urgent now but gentle, like a hand smoothing her hair. The locket pulsed, and Clara pressed the stone, feeling for anything she'd missed. A faint click sounded, deeper than before, and a small panel slid open beside the hearth, revealing a shallow compartment. Inside was a single object, a folded cloth, heavy with something inside. Clara's heart raced as she unwrapped it, revealing a small gold nugget, its surface rough but glinting in the lantern's light. A note was tucked beneath it in her mother's hand. Asterisk. This is his truth, Clara. The mine's proof. I hid it to keep you safe. Forgive me. Asterisk. Clara's breath caught. The nugget was from the mine, the fortune Samuel had promised, the secret he died for. Her mother had buried it all, the deed, the veil, the nugget to protect her from the men who'd hunted him, from the greed that had torn them apart. The whisper came again, softer now, Clara. It was a release, a farewell, as if Eleanor's voice could finally rest. A creak came from the lobby, sharp and deliberate. Clara's head snapped up, her hand closing around the nugget. Caleb, she said, her voice steady. She stood, slipping the nugget and note into the satchel, and moved to the door, unlocking it. He was there, in the lobby, his hat low, his eyes glinting with a mix of hunger and regret. You found it, he said, his voice low, almost a whisper. The gold, the mine's proof. He stepped closer, his boots soft on the floorboards, but the inn groaned again, a low rumble that made him pause. Clara clutched the satchel, the locket warm against her chest. It's not yours, she said, her voice firm. It was never yours. My mother hid it for me, not you. Caleb's smile was gone, his eyes dark with something like pain. I didn't want it to end like this, he said. I owed Samuel. I thought finding it would make it right. But you're her daughter. It's yours. He stepped back, his hands raised, as if surrendering. Take it, Clara. But be careful. That gold's got a shadow. Always has. The inn creaked, the chandelier swaying faintly, its crystals clinking. The air was thick, the scent of roses overwhelming, but the whisper didn't come again. Clara felt it, her mother's presence, fading, as if the truth had set her free. I'm not afraid, she said, meeting Caleb's eyes. I'll carry it. For her. Caleb nodded, his expression unreadable. You're stronger than she was, he said softly. Stronger than me. He turned, his shadow slipping into the darkness of the lobby, his footsteps fading into the night. The inn was silent now, its weight lifting, as if it, too, had let go. Clara stood alone, the satchel heavy at her side. The deed, the nugget, the vial, they were her mother's legacy, a fortune and a burden. She didn't know what she'd do with them, sell the land, keep the gold, or leave it buried, but she knew she'd carry it forward, for Eleanor, for herself. The locket cooled against her skin, its pulse gone, and Clara smiled, a quiet peace settling over her. The inn had given her what she came for, the truth and her mother's love. She stepped outside, the plains stretching under the moonlight, the stars bright above. The rosebush in the garden stood silent, its petals still. Clara took a deep breath, the scent of roses fading into the night. She was done here. The inn had no more secrets to give. Not all spirits seek to frighten. Some just wish to be remembered. If their tale lingered with you, let it rest with your breath. Sleep well tonight. And if you hear a whisper in your dreams, maybe it's just the end of the story.